Whenever I start a new playthrough of Stardew Valley, I go in with one goal in mind: complete the community centre in the first year. That's not a unique goal, there's even an option you can turn on when you start a new farm to guarantee you're able to do it. And I've never done it. I've come close, but there's always at least one thing I don't get done in time, and that thing is usually truffles. There's no bonus for getting the community centre completely finished in the first year, but there are a lot of things locked behind the community centre completion. So for that reason, I feel naturally drawn to trying to get everything done on that first go around the loop. I know I'm not the only one, that's why the guarantee year 1 completion option even exists. With that in mind, it sounds obvious that Stardew Valley can be a little bit stressful, time limits are inherently stressful, and that first year is a time limit. But how strict a time limit is it? Just a quick heads up before we get into it though, this video was mostly written before the 1.6 update, but I've had a look through the patch note and pretty much everything should still be relevant. So, from the moment you wake up to the moment you pass out from exhaustion, a Stardew Valley day is 14 minutes and 20 seconds. This is the maximum time you have, and that doesn't include cutscenes or other instances where time is paused. That means a year is, at most, around 26.5 hours. Okay, so that's a lot of time to work with, and if you've played Stardew Valley, you probably know that you're not going to use every second of that time. Some days you'll finish everything you need to do with plenty of time remaining, and you could drag the day out by fishing or mining, but you're probably eager to go to sleep and see what the next day holds. So does that mean you've actually got a ton of downtime in those 26.5 hours? Yeah, you do. I mean, if you want to min-max the game, you might be using every second, but otherwise, there's hours of time that you could waste away just watching the river go by. Except those 26.5 hours come with two major catches that make it more stressful than it seems. I call these the pillars of stress. I don't really know why, but that phrase I've already written in the script quite a lot, so I've gone back to add this self-aware explanation here. I'll reveal the second one later because it's sort of the key to this whole thing, but the first pillar of stress is that 26.5 hour long year comes with its own Matryoshka doll series of loops within loops. The years in Stardew Valley contain, as I'm sure you could have guessed, 4 seasons. Remarkably similar to our seasons in the real world, spring, summer, fall and winter, the Stardew Valley year is broken up into spring, summer, fall and winter. And yes, it does kill me to say fall instead of autumn, but that's what it's called in the game, so I'm gonna suck it up for this one. Now, each season is different, which does mean they aren't really loops in themselves, as they don't have repeating events in common. But there is one event that each season shares that happens on the exact same night, regardless of the season. And that is the season change. On the night of the 28th, that's the last day of the month, the forage, crops, and fish that are exclusive to that season change. That means within the 112-day time limit of the Stardew Valley year, there's 4 28-day time limits. Say for example, you needed 5 gold quality pumpkins to complete the quality crops bundle. You'd need to have your pumpkins planted on 4/15 for them to finish growing before the season changes. Okay, let's zoom in a little more to the week-long loops. The major things to pay attention to here are shop closures, such as Pierre's being closed on Wednesdays, and the traveling merchant who shows up on Friday and Sunday. You can also give 2 gifts per week per villager, so you want to be mindful of when that resets if you want to make some friends. And now the big one, day-long loops. You have 14 minutes, and there's a lot that needs to be done every day. You're going to want to water your plants, especially early game when you don't have sprinklers. You're going to want to pet your animals, and don't forget your cat or dog. Those animals you petted probably have eggs, milk, whatever, and you're also going to need to talk to your friends every day if you want to keep them. Plus, it's a good idea to check the TV every day so you know the luck for the day and the weather for tomorrow. Luck and weather are actually very important variables in this daily loop. If it's a good luck day, you might want to head to the mines for those nice juicy iridium meatballs. And on rainy days, you might need to go fishing because there's some fish that you can only catch in the rain. And what about birthdays? If it's your friend's birthday, you need to get that gift to them before the end of the day. Or maybe it's the fair, and yeah, I guess we'll go do that. So on top of all the things you have to do every day, there's a bunch of variables that can really change the day up as well. And here's where the loops come cascading down. Let's say it's the 15th of fall. It's also raining and a good luck day, and a bunch of your crops are ready to harvest. The day starts and you water your plants in the greenhouse. You harvest some wheat you had planted, ready for winter, and you pet your chickens, grab their eggs. Awesome. Now let's do some fishing because we need to wait for piers to open. You want to buy some pumpkin seeds so you can plant them in time for them to grow before the end of the season. So you do some river fishing, hoping for a shad, which can only be caught in the rain, and if you don't get it by the end of the season, you'll have to wait for spring. But you catch the shad, and piers is open. So you purchase your pumpkin seeds and ram those suckers into the ground. Now let's go speak to Haley, who you intend to marry because you see the good in her. Oh, it's a Monday, so the 2 gifts you gave her last week have left a short-term memory. Great, let's give her a sunflower. Hang on a second, fall 15th? That's Sandy's birthday. Oh well, you were going that way anyway, and the bus is ready, so you hitch a ride to the desert and deliver Sandy a daffodil. She says you remembered her birthday, and you did, barely. And now you have some time left, and it's a good luck day, so down the mines you go. Time does move a little slower down here, which is nice because it's scary, and you're not big on Stardew combat. You get some iridium for your efforts, but look at the clock, it's getting late. This is bad. Sprinting out of the mine, you head to the bus and rush home. Is that everything? You had some things in storage you wanted to donate to the museum, but I guess that didn't have to be today. You hop into bed having done everything you set out to do today, right? Good heavens. You didn't pet the cat. I guess it is hard to do it all in one day. When I wrote all that, it was before 1.6, and you didn't really get anything for petting your pet every day. You do now, but I didn't know that, so we'll carry on. So that scenario, it might be a bit over the top, but that's what it looks like when all of the time limits from all the different loops come crashing together. There's probably more I could have added too. So 40 minutes for all that, well, a bit longer because of the time dilation in the skull cavern. Is that why I find Stardew so stressful? Is it that simple? There's a lot to do in 40 minutes. A little bit, yeah. But I think there's a little more going on here. So let's take a look at a different game for a little bit. I want to start by saying I'm going to do everything I can here to not spoil this game. At all. Not even the central premise. We're talking about Outer Wilds. In Outer Wilds, you're set loose in a mini star system with a bunch of really cool little planets to visit. These planets really do orbit their sun, and you have to take that into account when you're trying to land on them. As they go around, they change over time in various fun ways that make for some really cool puzzles, forcing you to think about the game not only in the dimension of space, but also time. And then, after 22 minutes, everything goes back to where it started. And that's all you have. 22 minutes to do whatever you were trying to do. But unlike Stardew, with its loops within loops, that's all you get in Outer Wilds. Every loop is the same as the last. You'll never have one where the weather's different, there's no special events that change from loop to loop. Whatever you're doing this loop, you can do it in the next loop. You could have done it in the previous loop. You could have even done it the first time you booted up the game. Just like how you have to be careful with your timing in Stardew, there's a few moments in Outer Wilds where you have to really be on the ball. On a planet called Ember Twin, there's one location you need to get to through a cave system that's slowly filling up with sand. And if you don't make it through quick enough, the sand will rise too high for you to get any further. Meaning, you'll have to wait for the next loop when the sand is gone. Or, And this is for sure one of the more stressful parts of Outer Wilds, because right here you'll be feeling the time constraint more than maybe anywhere else. So let's compare this to something similar in Stardew. It's not a perfect comparison because the games play completely differently, but I think this should illustrate what I'm trying to say pretty well. In Stardew Valley, there's the Skull Cavern, and you get a reward for reaching floor 25 of this dungeon. Time actually moves slower here, as I mentioned earlier, so we're a little closer to Outer Wilds' 22-minute time limit. Not exact, but closer. So let's talk about these two spelunking adventures. In the sandy caves in Outer Wilds, there's instructions written throughout telling you where to go. Fantastic. Maybe you'll spend a few minutes hopping over gaps, going down tunnels, and then you get stuck. You double back and reread the note that led you the way you went. Realize you got it wrong. Fine. The sand is rising. You can physically see you don't have much time. How long has it been? 10, 15 minutes? You rush ahead, going the right way this time. You must be close. Maybe you can even see the end goal. But you are too late. Your time is up, and you failed. Okay, back to Stardew. To be fair, a lot of the stress comes from needing to fight off enemies, but if you've been lucky, maybe you're making your way through the cave with minimal combat. You blow up some rocks, build staircases, hop down halls. You're trying your best to make it to floor 25, but you haven't got the luck you needed. Floor 22, only a few left, but you make the call. If you don't leave now, you won't get to bed in time. You failed. But there is a huge difference here, and that's the key to this whole stress situation. In both of these cases, you lose upwards of 15 minutes of your real life time, but in Outer Wilds, that's actually all you lose. In Stardew, you've lost an entire day. Suddenly you're one day closer to any deadlines you were working towards, fish you need to catch maybe, or money you were trying to collect. You're closer to that deadline and you need to spend another day in the mines. Consequences. If you waste time in Stardew, it's gone forever. And if you're losing a whole day, you might find yourself in a situation where you were one day too late for something you absolutely needed to do. And so, the second pillar of stress reveals itself. Let's say in Stardew, you were fishing for a sunfish, for the river fish bundle, and it's the last day of summer. But you failed to catch one. You lose that day, you can't restart it, it's gone. And now it's fall. The sunfish won't be back until spring. You've got to sit through 2 whole seasons before you can complete the community center. Unless you get lucky and it shows up in the traveling merchant. But let's say it doesn't. That's the second pillar of stress. On the first hand was all the small time limits sitting within the 26.5-hour year. But on this hand is the year itself. You see, you do have 26.5 hours to work with, but that generously long time limit, it's not an advantage. It's a shackle. If you miss something like a festival or a birthday, you've got 26 hours to wait until you can get it again. And yeah, you can skip days or end them early to cut down the time, but you're still going to want to pet your animals, talk to your friends, maybe water crops. Plus you'd be missing out on time you could be spending mining, fishing, or doing quests. So, while a significantly shorter time limit, say 22 minutes, might seem more stressful, it's also the most you'd ever have to wait for anything. So let's bring these pillars together, the short time loops and the consequences. Managing lots of small time loops is difficult, and the punishment for failing to manage this time properly can lead to having to wait an awfully long time to get things back on track. Now, I do have a little bit more to say about Outer Wilds in a bit, because this is stealthily also a video gushing about Outer Wilds, but before I get to that, I'm going to bring the 2 pillars of stress together for one last Stardew Valley example. I'm going to loop right back to the beginning of the video and talk about me failing to get a truffle. When I fail to get the community center done within the first year, it's usually because I don't get truffles in time. And I bet more than a few of you could say the same. Truffles are snuffled up by adult pigs, and to get pigs, you need a deluxe barn. And to get that, you need to buy the barn and upgrade it twice. Once you've done that, you can buy a baby pig, which will take 10 days to grow into an adult, at which point you can start getting truffles. But they don't find truffles in winter. So you'll need to buy a piglet from Marnie's on fall 18th at the latest. Knock knock, who's there? It's Marnie's freaking birthday, so you actually can't buy a pig on fall 18th. So you'll have to buy one on the 17th. Okay, so I'll need the deluxe barn ready for the 17th. barn takes 2 days to upgrade, and work starts on it the morning after you purchase. So you'll need to fork out 25,000 gold and 450 wood by the 15th of fall. This gives you 70 in-game days to get the capital and resources. But you also need to get the initial barn and upgrade it once, which is another 18,000 gold plus resources. Now I can smell you adding those numbers up, but don't get ahead of yourself. There's also the 16,000 gold that it costs to buy a single pig. So, in your first year, to get 1 truffle, you'll have to amass 59,000 gold before fall 17th, most of which you'll actually need before the 15th. 70 days. That's around 16 and a half in-game hours if you're maxing out your days. But thinking of it like you've got 16 and a half hours to get a nice big pig isn't quite right. Look at it this way. 70 days, probably more like 15 hours if you're not maxing out your days, which you probably won't be, not every day. So you could get 15 hours into the game before you realize you don't have the money for the deluxe barn and it's too late to finish the community center in the first year. 15 hours of playing, and maybe you made the mistake hours ago. Now what? Do you reset? You don't have to, it was a self-imposed goal. So maybe you just wait for spring. That's what I do when this happens to me. That's probably what most people do. It's not like it's wasted time. You're still growing your wealth, probably mining resources, making friends, but all of the content locked behind the community center is around 8 hours away now. Unless you get lucky and find a truffle with the traveler merchant, but never happened to me. Now bear in mind, all of that's just for 1 item in the community center. It is probably the hardest to get, but you still have to juggle a whole lot of other stuff around that too. It's not just as simple as working your way up to 59,000 in time, because you will need money for other things. So yeah, Stardew Valley is a nice chill game, but excuse me if I don't feel like I can relax by the river. I could be fishing right now, and I'd hate to miss out on buying a pig by just 100 gold. Now that I've answered why Stardew is stressful, I think I need to go a little deeper into why Outer Wilds isn't, despite its super short time limit. Well, isn't always stressful. I talked earlier about running out of time in that cave. Let's hop back into that situation. Now it might sound a bit frustrating, having to go back 20-ish minutes every time you fail to reach your goal. You never gain new abilities, there's no keys, no items. You're effectively reset completely to 0. For the most part, your 100th loop in Outer Wilds will start exactly like your second. The first loop is a little different, but not in any way that's relevant here. In fact, you could play Outer Wilds for 10 hours, and then buy it on a brand new console, and then once you've cleared the intro bit, you'd be back where you were. The only thing you'd lose is the notes on your ship's computer, but if you had a really good memory, you could keep on playing as if you'd never swapped over to a new file. See, in Outer Wilds, there's no consequences. Everything you do, anywhere you go, it all returns to nothing. You always end up back where you started. So this cave, you have to restart from the beginning. You'll never make any progress until you get all the way through. Why isn't that frustrating? Stressful even. That's because of how progress is made in Outer Wilds. All of your progress is done by learning. In other adventure games, you might progress through a cave by finding a key, or perhaps unlocking an ability that helps you open the door. In Outer Wilds, you learn how the door works, and then you can always go through it, because you know how. And I mean you, as the player, are doing the learning. So in this cave, you might go the wrong way and run out of time. But you haven't lost all your progress, because next time you go in the cave, you already know which way not to go. Not only that, but you're probably going to move faster through the areas of the cave that you did get right the first time, or the second time, or the third. You know what you're doing now. You'll be more confident going through. And if you fail again, no worries. You'll be back at the cave in a moment, and you're even more familiar than you were last time. So because there's no consequences for failing, the only thing that's changed between this loop and the last is that you know better. Outer Wilds really runs with this lack of consequences. Science is a major theme of the game, and as you play Outer Wilds, you'll likely become somewhat of a scientist yourself. Let's take the sand on Ember Twin for example. The sand is pouring from the twin planet Ash in a giant column. It circles the planet on the equator. You're curious, what is that column of sand? Could there be something inside, making the sand shift from one planet to another? Well, there's an easy way to find out. Let's just hop down the canyon and jump into the waterfall of sand. Yeah, that didn't work. But that's okay. It's barely a setback. No consequences means no reason not to try it. This is all over Outer Wilds. Some of the solutions to puzzles involve doing things that might seem dangerous, maybe even terrifying. But you can freely try those dangerous things safe in the knowledge that it'll only cost you a few minutes. So you can try all sorts of stupid things. What happens if I jump into this geyser? What if I fly directly into the sun? Can I make the jump from the moon to Timber Hearth? Because there's no punishment for death, and because all progress in the game is through learning, you're not only able to, you're encouraged to experiment with these kinds of things. The character you play as is an intrepid explorer, bouncing around the solar system in a rickety wooden ship in the name of scientific discovery. And you as a player are really able to embody that. Narrative in harmony with gameplay. And I do know it's nonsense to compare Outer Wilds to Stardew Valley, because they're not even remotely similar games. But the larger point I'm trying to make is about the liberation of time. That was the original title for this video, but I decided it was super pretentious. What I mean is, time is the most restrictive resource we have. In Stardew Valley, it's the one thing you can't get back. You can recover your money, but you waste time and it's gone. Spring 1st, year 1 happens exactly once. Outer Wilds liberates the resource of time by making it utterly meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And often, even wasted real-world time in the game is still utilized by learning from your mistakes. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Both games' approach to the resource of time fit perfectly within those games. I talked about how Outer Wilds' lack of consequence allows you to embody a scientific explorer, but so does Stardew's changing seasons and strict time constraints allow you to embody a farmer, planning ahead and crunching numbers so you can make the most out of your land and out of your time. There's a reason I pet my cat every day in Stardew, even before you actually got something out of it. I'm invested in the game and in the world. It's the same reason I get stressed with Stardew, because I care. In Outer Wilds, sometimes I'll waste an entire loop, just floating off into space, listening to my friends playing music on the signal scope. In Stardew Valley, I sit through the community center completion cutscene every time, even though I know what happens. Stardew Valley may be stressful, but it utilizes time as a resource in a way that makes me learn my neighbors' birthdays, prepare my best products in time for the annual fair, and show up to Marnie's on the 17th of fall, because I know she has an important doctor's visit on her birthday. Or at least, maybe next playthrough, I'll remember to do that.